Chapter 5 Shadows Along the Crater's Edge. The village's fires crackled in restless harmony with the cool night air. Smoke drifted upward, mingling with the thick canopy of stars, but the sky above the clan of the wolf felt different tonight. The stars, usually sharp and clear, shimmered as though veiled by something unseen. The air carried an unfamiliar weight, like the anticipation of an unspoken warning. Dolo shifted on the wooden platform by his family's shelter, spear balanced across his knees. The hum of mana still resonated in his veins, a low vibration that pulsed with the steady rhythm of the earth itself. Every breath carried faint scents of wet bark, stone, and distant wildflowers. But beneath those familiar aromas, another scent lurked, a scent of decay. The forest whispered. Its voice drifted through the wind, curling around his senses like a vine seeking purchase. The words were faint and indistinct, but the feeling was undeniable. Something was coming. Across the clearing near the watchtower, Mako stood alone. His figure was half-shadowed, his axe glinting softly under the moon. His posture was tense, shoulders tight beneath the thick leather of his tunic. His eyes didn't rest on the forest. They were locked on the firelight and the boy sitting beside it. Aros sat on a woven mat near the central hearth, arms wrapped around his knees. His golden eyes reflected the flames, and his expression was distant, as though listening to something no one else could hear. The cloak Dolo had given him hung loosely from his shoulders, and despite his fragile appearance, there was a stillness about him that unsettled the village. It unsettled Mako most of all. The older warrior's grip tightened on his axe handle, the sensation that had stirred in him since the crater, the strange warmth prickling beneath his skin, had grown stronger each day. At first he had dismissed it as exhaustion or stress, but tonight it surged through him like liquid fire. The mana coursing through Dolo's veins came like a summer breeze, natural and harmonious. But for Mako, it wasn't the same. It was different, darker, angrier. His breaths came slower as he focused on the sensation. The warmth didn't soothe, it seared. It fed on his frustration, his resentment, his long-buried hatred of the shadow tribes. It coiled like a serpent beneath his skin, whispering to him in a voice that wasn't quite his own. He could feel the boy's presence even from across the clearing. Aros radiated mana, not aggressively but consistently, like a candle glowing through thick fog. And each time Mako felt that pulse, the power within him stirred and burned hotter. He didn't trust it. He didn't trust the boy. A shiver crept along his spine as a memory surfaced. The screams, the flames, the crackling of shadow magic as it consumed his family. His father's eyes wide and empty as the shadow tribe's shamans twisted the mana-tainted air with their cursed artifacts. The black mist had wrapped around his mother like a snake, squeezing the life from her lungs as she choked out his name. He had been 7, hidden beneath a fallen cart, helpless. They had called him weak, told him the shadows had claimed his tribe because they had forgotten fear. Mako's jaw clenched. He had promised himself that day, if he ever felt mana again, he would bend it to his will, control it, master it, and destroy anyone who dared use it against him. His gaze returned to Aros. The boy had brought mana back to the world. He hadn't asked for it, but he was here nonetheless. And Mako could feel the shadow circling closer in response to the child's presence. The mana in Mako's veins pulsed harder. The wind shifted, the whispering trees trembled, and a familiar chill stirred the air. Shadow. It was near, but he said nothing. The wolves arrived without a sound. Dolo felt them before he saw them. The tremor in the earth deepened, carrying their presence through the soil like a ripple across still water. He stood, leaning his spear against his shoulder, and peered toward the tree line. Shadows detached from the darkness beyond the village perimeter. The wolves moved as one, silent, efficient, their eyes glinting like pale moons in the night. Fenra led them, her powerful shoulders rolling with each step. The pack fanned out, forming a half-circle near the fire. The villagers froze at the sight of the wolves gathering so close to the hearth. Whispers of unease spread through the crowd. Wolves had long been allies of the clan, but this behavior was unusual. Fenra's gaze locked on Dolo. He took a step toward her. The mana in his veins stirred, recognizing the Alpha's presence. "Earth Speaker," came the wolf's voice, carried by the silent tether of mana. "The forest stirs. The wind carries sense it has not known for generations." "What kind of sense?" Dolo asked aloud. Fenra's ears flattened. "Shadow, and the stench of broken magic." Dolo's blood turned cold. "Where?" The Alpha lifted her snout toward the eastern horizon. "The scar. The place where the boy fell. The crater." Dolo turned toward Mako. The older warrior was already moving toward him. "The crater," Mako said, voice tight. "We need to move." "Now," Dolo agreed. Fenra growled softly. "We will guide you." Dolo rushed toward the eastern gate, Mako beside him. The wolves melted into the shadows ahead, their low growls rippling through the trees. Behind them, Aro sat rigid by the fire. His eyes followed the warriors as they vanished into the night. The flames around him flickered unnaturally, bending toward his small figure as though drawn by invisible strings. The villagers muttered among themselves. Elder Waya emerged from her hut and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "The first battle has begun," she whispered. The forest swallowed them. Dolo kept pace with Fenra as she weaved through the thick undergrowth. Mana guided his steps, attuning his body to the uneven ground. The roots of the trees whispered warnings, passing along faint vibrations that spoke of the wrongness ahead. The crater's scar had become a wound festering in the land's heart. The natural mana recoiled from it like flesh from flame. Mako ran just behind them, his breath quick and shallow. The power within him throbbed more violently now. It no longer whispered, it growled, hungry and insistent. His hand brushed against a nearby trunk as he passed. The bark blackened and cracked beneath his touch, oozing sap like blood. His heart raced. He clenched his fist to stop the trembling. The shadows drew closer. He could feel them. The presence was familiar, like the sickening touch of the corrupted mist that had devoured his family. He should have told Dolo, but the warmth coursing through his veins whispered another suggestion. "Wait. Watch. See what this power can do." Mako ground his teeth and kept running. The wolves slowed as they reached the ridge overlooking the crater. Fenra crouched low, baring her teeth in a silent snarl. Dolo dropped beside her, peering into the clearing below. The crater's heart pulsed like an infected wound. The ground surrounding the impact site was blackened and cracked. The central fissure glowed faintly with deep crimson veins, and the air shimmered with unnatural heat. Figures moved around the crater. The shadow tribes, 6 of them. Their faces were hidden behind carved bone masks, and their bodies wrapped in patchwork armor of leather and iron. Each warrior carried a spear tipped with dull, black obsidian. Dark mist coiled around the weapons, not true mana, but an echo of it. Dolo remembered Elder Waya's words, shadow artifacts, tainted tools from a dead age. The shadow warriors moved with purpose. One knelt beside the fissure, pouring a viscous black substance into the crack. The earth recoiled from the liquid, and the crimson veins spread further into the ground. Dolo's vision blurred. He saw tendrils of shadow coiling beneath the surface, like black roots reaching for the forest's heart. "They're trying to poison the land," he whispered. Fenra's growl deepened. "The wound grows. If they succeed, the earth will die here. The forest will wither." Dolo gripped his spear. "We can't let that happen." Mako crouched beside him. His eyes gleamed faintly in the moonlight, and his expression was cold. "Then we hit them hard, fast, no mercy." Dolo hesitated. Mako's voice sounded strange, tighter, harsher. The older warrior's hand rested on his axe, knuckles pale. His chest rose and fell with shallow, rapid breaths. Dolo reached out with his mana sense. The forest, the earth, the wolves, they all resonated with Mana's warm, steady hum. But from Mako's presence came a different sensation, sharp, hot, and coiled like a wolf backed into a corner. Anger. Mako met his gaze. "What are you waiting for?" Dolo turned toward Fenra. The wolf nodded. "Now," she said. The pack sprang forward. Dolo followed, spear raised. Mako lingered for half a heartbeat longer. The power within him coiled around his ribs, whispering promises of strength, of revenge. The shadows below stirred, sensing their arrival. The mist thickened in response. Mako's lips twisted into a grim smile. He gripped his axe and charged into the clearing. The shadow called to him, and this time he didn't turn away.